clear the still shop infield of stock for our 3-day sale.
No one will be at Enfield on those days.
Why?
They'll all be at Still Shop Paynham.
The Still Shop 3-day sale. Still Shop Enfield and Paynham. You decide which one's best.
$13.95 FiveAA. Call 8223 0000 to talk Adelaide. This is Peter Godfrey.
Goodness, where's the morning gone? It's flying away at a rapid rate. Let's head to New Zealand, though, and find out what's happening across the ditch. Selwyn Manning from livenews.co.nz. How are you, Selwyn?
Yeah, very good, Peter.
That's the way. Yeah. Hey, just a quick thing to start off with before we get on to some things from your part of the world. You've got a greyhound as a pet, your dog,
Yes,
which
absolutely.
is a former...
Yeah, we've had two. So they're both from Australia. They were brought over here to race. First off, we had Jacko, whose racing name was No Help Indeed, and he was from one of Victoria's big winners and big sires, a dog called Bombastic Shiraz. So some who follow the dogs might recognise that name from a few years ago. Yeah. Sadly, Jacko passed away recently. He developed a cancer. But we've got Blake here, who was also brought over from Australia. Yeah. His father is a dog that's a big breeder over in the United States. So anyway, Blake was brought over here to race too. But fantastic dogs. And I understand from what you were saying before we went on, Peter, there's a bit of a drive for adoption.
Yeah. The Greyhound Adoption Agency have got an open day this weekend that we've been running some announcements about that. And I just thought, I've kind of fallen in love with them, although not sort of in a position to have a dog at this point in time. But yeah, beautiful dogs. And as you've had the two, just your thoughts on them as a pet. What makes them such a good pet?
Yeah, well, basically, a lot of people will think greyhounds, you'll have to exercise and exercise and exercise, you run yourself ragged if you have greyhounds. It's actually not the case, they're like a sprinter, that they'll have a quick burst of speed and run, and that's pretty much it.
That's it.
Every day, every morning I kind of take them, our ones for a bit of a stroll around the park, and then every couple of days they'll go up to a free running area which is secured, they'll have a bit of a gallop there, and fantastic. Most of the day they'll be asleep, but the big thing is that they're fantastic as family pets. It's just a bit of a transition, for a few weeks when you first get them, because of any kennels and racing and things like that. And some, if you've got cats and things like that, well, some of the dogs, they pass different tests or they fail different tests. So they'll pass a small dog test, usually, and then, they'll either pass or they won't a cat test. So if you've got a cat, there's been a lot of successful settling in with cats, with ones who haven't got such a high prey drive. They might not have been that flash on the track. The ones that are really good on the track, they've got a high prey drive, and pretty much you keep them away from cats. That's what, like Blake and our past dog Jacko, they were pretty high in that prey instinct, so we're very careful in that way. But honestly, with children, with family, they're really fantastic, and they bond so well with humans. I've had a number of dogs since I was a kid, and I've got to say the greyhounds do gel into what you want and what you're thinking. They're very, very good in that way. Wonderful dog.
Beautiful, wonderful. Yeah, I've met a couple of greyhounds, and their eyes. You can see they love you from the moment they see you. The look in their eyes.
Old Blake is here sitting beside me at the moment, looking up, hearing me mentioning his name and thinking, I wonder what this is about. So there you go.
Oh, there we go. So anyway, it's on Saturday, 11 till 3, the Greyhound Adoption Open Day, Cardigan Street at Angle Park. So there we go. Well, thank you for that. So let's get on to other things that we're here to talk about. Some news from your part of the world now. John Key, your Prime Minister.
Yeah.
His credibility and truthfulness once again becoming an issue. Tell us why.
Yes, it is.
What's the latest?
Well, the allegations were that came out yesterday, Peter, that he misled Parliament this week, stating that he had not spoken to an attack blogger about an embargoed intelligence report. Now, I'll go into that. Within hours, Key had to return after making that statement to the House that he had not been in contact with an attack blogger over this intelligence report. So within hours, he returned to the debating chamber to make a personal statement. And in essence, it pointed out his answer to the questions from the Labour Party on that subject were incorrect. Now, Labour had been asking the Prime Minister whether he had had any contact with this controversial blogger, Cameron Slater. And he operates the whale oil website here, and it's notorious. Now, the Prime Minister was asked if he had been in touch with Cam Slater about one of two reports. First, the government inquiry into whether or not former Justice Minister Judith Crusher Collins had dishonourably sought to undermine the Serious Fraud Office boss. So that report was out this week. But or a report by the Inspector General of Intelligence and Security. Now, Cam Slater, just give a bit of background then. Cam Slater was earlier this year alleged to be the main recipient of information that was leaked by the Prime Minister's office, and that information was stuff that was acquired through those extensive powers of government, formatted and released in a way so as to destroy the reputations of the National Party's opponents. Now, there's all sorts of things that have been investigated over this at the moment, and so that's the allegations, and they do seem to have stacked up the test of time. And that was work by Nicky Hager, one of New Zealand's best investigative journalists. On Monday, information began to surface in mainstream media, Peter, about details of what was about to be released on Tuesday by the Inspector General of Intelligence. Now, that inquiry, that report from her inquiry, was into allegations that the New Zealand Security Intelligence Service had become politicised by the Prime Minister's office and selectively provided documents to Cam Slater so that he could attack and undermine the reputation of the then Labour leader Phil Goff. So that's the background to this. As it turns out, Phil Goff himself this week had discussed in part the findings of the Inspector General's report while bound by confidentiality conditions. Now, because of that, the Prime Minister's office was tipped off that Goff had been talking to journalists about the report's findings, and the Prime Minister absolutely hit out and slammed Goff on Wednesday this is yesterday morning, for breaching his obligations to maintain secrecy prior to the report being released. So this is real heavy stuff, and this is also wrapped up in statute and law and et cetera, about breaching the Inspector General's orders. Now, so when the Prime Minister was asked in Parliament, Peter, this is where it all boils down to really, whether he too had discussed the report, when the John Key said no, he was able really then to assert the moral high ground and to continue to attack his opponents. But his answer later in the afternoon became untenable after Cameron Slater forwarded redacted screenshots of a text exchange between himself and the Prime Minister to another blogger who then published those.
Caught him out, basically.
So the Prime Minister scooted down to the House, the debating chamber, correcting himself, and said, and I'll quote here, "On Monday, on the 24th of November, I received an unsolicited text message from Cameron Slater with a reference to the IGIS report." That's the intelligence report I was talking about. Then he goes, "Then there was a very short exchange where I briefly acknowledged that text message," end of quote. Now, on Tuesday, Key also was asked by a press gallery journalist when was the last time he'd spoken to Slater, and he replied, and I quote here, Peter, "I don't know, I can't recall." And then he added, and I quote again, "I haven't spoken to him on the phone for months and months and months on end. He sent me a text once, but I can't recall when that was," end of quote. Now, as it turned out, the Prime Minister was in a text exchange with Slater the very night before.
The night before, very short memory.
So all of this, the Prime Minister is saying, well, the exchange he didn't reveal any of the detail of the intelligence report, and then the Prime Minister's office last night released information or a transcript of the text exchange between Slater and himself that had happened the night before, where it shows that, from what they've released, if that's accurate, that the Prime Minister didn't actually reveal any details of the report. So he's right in that way. But his truthfulness, or telling, explaining the whole truth when asked very specific questions, is once again in question. And it really does, Kiwis are really asked once again to consider whether or not the Prime Minister, of which has just been re-elected for the third time, whether or not he's a liar. Now, I don't know whether or not we in New Zealand are getting all tied up in knots over this kind of stuff. What would it be like if the same kind of thing.
Well, interesting you mentioned that, because that's been very much a topic of discussion quite a lot about, on specifics and on sort of generalising just about whether politicians lie, and we're having a big issue at the moment with the building of submarines, which are happening here in Adelaide, but that may be moved to Japan, that Japan might build them. Yet there was a promise before our recent election that they would continue to build here. So there's this whole thing of, politicians saying one thing and then another thing soon afterwards.
I mean, over here, there are some who say, it's what all politicians.
Well, yeah,
yes. But at the end of it, this is the Prime Minister who's in charge of, obviously, the government of New Zealand.
Yeah.
And if you can't rely on what he's saying, then what have you got?
Yeah.
And that's the concern.
Good question.
It all boils, and that's a similar kind of issue that raised here a number of years ago now too, about some significant kind of things that used to be manufactured or were promised to be manufactured in New Zealand, and then they were flicked off to other countries to be done. So it's like outsourcing in a sense. So, the credibility of our top politician, the most preferred Prime Minister in ages, once again here is getting a bit of a boot.
Indeed. So we'll just have to have a quick break, and we'll come back with you in a moment. Talk about another colourful character from your side of the ditch.
Yeah.
Look forward to hearing about that. Back in a moment. Selwyn Manning's with us from livenews.co.nz.
Skin cancer, premature ageing, cataracts. UV radiation is a major contributor to each of these eye health problems. Crizal UV prescription lenses fight the UV attack front and back, and they are the only prescription lenses to be endorsed by Cancer Council. Don't wait until it's too late. Visit or make an appointment at Health Partners Optical today and ask the friendly team at Health Partners Optical about protecting the health of your eyes with Crizal UV lenses.
If you're in pain, try Pain Away. You can use Pain Away Arthritis and Sports Pain Relief Spray and Creams in 3 easy steps. Spray on and around the affected area, rub in some cream, then spray again.
Use only as directed. If symptoms persist, see your healthcare professional.
From only $9.95, try Barnacle Bill's scrumptious snack pack range, including butterfish, calamari, prawns and chicken, all served with our original tartare sauce and chips. Everyone loves Barnacle Bill, and it's easy to see why. Everything is freshly prepared. Enjoy our famous orange snack pack box, packed with quality seafood and chicken for over 40 years from only $9.95. For lunch or dinner, it's gotta be Barnacle Bill.
Fresh from the sea, it's gotta be Barnacle Bill.
If you want value, range and choice, you want the largest independent supermarket in all of South Australia. You want Manopara Foodland. Manopara Foodland has everything you could ever want. They're committed to supporting local Australian growers, and when you buy Aussie grown, you're buying absolute freshness. The only thing better than the range is the friendly service. If you can't find what you're looking for, just ask. Value, range and choice in South Australia's largest independent supermarket, Manopara Foodland. Main North Road, Smithfield, open 7 days.
I'm Doug, and I've dug myself a big one. I'm working with a tradie mate on site, so I help him out by running a cable down beside the gas line. Well, when I say beside, I mean right through the gas line. Caused a bit of a stink.
Dial before you dig, Doug. Protect underground pipes and cables and save potential repair bills and injury. Dial before you dig. The essential first step. Go to 1100.com.au or call 1100.
The Greyhound Adoption Open Day is on Saturday, November 29 at Cardigan Street, Angle Park, with free entertainment for the kids and beautiful greyhounds up for adoption. So come and find your forever friend. Google Gap SA for info.
Talking Adelaide with Peter Godfrey on 1395 5AA.
And we're talking about things happening across the ditch with Selwyn Manning from livenews.co.nz. Now, from one colourful character, your Prime Minister, to another one, the internet tycoon Kim Dotcom. Now, he's had a fairly lavish lifestyle, but all come to an end. He's broke, is he?
Yes. Well, Kim Dotcom stated this week, Peter, that he is broke. He says, is after 3 years of fighting in the courts against USA extradition applications.
Yeah.
living the high life while on bail from alleged mass copyright infringement charges, alleged money laundering charges connected to the mega upload site business. Now, Kim Dotcom says his lawyers have abandoned him after he ran out of money that was set aside to defend himself. He said that while taking part in all of that legal action, that it's basically exhausted his resources. Now, this conversation occurred in a live video exchange that he had between people in the United States that were at a conference and himself. So his bail conditions mean he can't leave his home he can leave his home, but he can't go further than 80 kilometres from his home. He's not allowed to fly in helicopters anymore. He's not allowed to do this and that, and there's a whole heap of bail conditions anyway. So he said that that basically, the whole experience in New Zealand has been an absolute devastating and awful experience for him and his family. Now, up to $50 million in assets and wealth have been exhausted, apparently. And
that was his wealth, was it? The $50 million?
Yeah. That was his personal wealth invested in his own business interests and also other stuff, I suppose. That's since, Peter, that $50 million has gone since the FBI drove that raid on his north of Auckland mansion in early 2012. Now, much of those assets apparently have been built up post that arrest at that time, like the launch of mega.co.nz, which is the file sharing business that he set up immediately after all of that, or pretty soon after that, and that apparently is going really well, and he sold all his interest in that or transferred them as well. And much of the assets have been put into family trusts, and the beneficiaries of the family trust is his estranged wife and children, and Dotcom is saying that he's basically cash broke. So that is something that has raised a few eyebrows over here, and it certainly explains why, perhaps, or that's his side of why Simpson and Grierson and some top flight lawyers here in New Zealand had abandoned representing him only a matter of weeks ago. So that's Dotcom. He is saying, and he said that there's a strong possibility that he will be placed in jail today. That's this Thursday, he said, and that's today. So he's obviously, absolutely rocked by this. He started off, Peter, as you probably picked up in our different bulletins over the last few years, that he was celebrated by many Kiwis, many in the media in particular, certainly while he was taking it to the government and those big wheeling Hollywood movie moguls, there was that spirit of, this guy, while he's a big fish in a small pond over here, he's taking it to these people, and there was a kind of a celebration around that. But as soon as he got involved with politics and setting up and founding the Internet Party, the public.com reckons has turned against him. He says that the media has as well, and all of this began, when he started involving himself in politics, and the Prime Minister began, as he says, to demonise him. He said in this video exchange, Peter, that the Prime Minister referred to him as a Nazi and set a narrative that basically deconstructed his reputation and made it, one that Kiwis would think, oh, God, this guy's no good. So now, if Dotcom's correct, I suppose what it does do is it shows that his experience is showing that the Kiwi tall poppy syndrome, our version of it, Peter, that great down under clobbering machine, if you want to call it that way, struck a bit of a heavy blow on this guy. And he was a once celebrated internet freedom hero who still seems to get attention overseas, but over here he's almost persona non grata.
Well, it's certainly, this has been all over. It was the BBC had this on their website. It's certainly garnering attention everywhere. Could he rise from the ashes, though?
Well, we'll see.
We'll have to see.
Certainly at the moment, as one journalist who's followed this case extensively said, the tide has been going out on .com all year.
Okay. There we go. All right, Selwyn, many thanks for joining us on the program this morning. Have yourself a great week, and we'll catch you again next week.
All the best with those greyhound
Indeed. Indeed. Thanks, Selwyn. Cheers, mate. Bye-bye. Selwyn Manning in New Zealand from livenews.co.nz.
This is Adelaide's FiveAA. Sunny and 28, it's 5:30, I'm Anne Stone. Prime Minister Tony Abbott has attacked the opposition for failing to support his GP co-payment, with the policy now shelved. It's understood the $7 fee has been abandoned following months of protests and Labor, the Greens and most crossbenchers vowing to block it. Mr Abbott says the policy would have helped get the economy back on track.
This is a Labor Party which has entirely given up on the long-term national interest. It's playing short-term politics at the expense of our country's long-term national interest. It's economic vandalism.